good morning, and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and thank you so much for joining us here this morning on Unfiltered Vision News. And like Dr. C likes to say, happy Friday. And today is our Friday prayer segment that we always have. I don't have a special guest, but I will be praying. And Patty Cakes, thank you so much. Patty Cakes says Grand Rising from DC. Grand Rising to you also. And thank you for everyone out there watching and listening this morning. You guys, it's really encouraging just to see everybody come in. And I also, before we get into our morning prayer, because this is something I'm asking you guys to pray with me for, is that I get more sponsors for the program. Right now, I don't have any. I would say my husband's my main sponsor right now, which I'm very grateful for him sponsoring the show. But it would be great to just have other sponsors and also to promote other people's products here on the show that may not necessarily get visibility, right, in the social media space. So thank you so much again for joining us this morning. And that's something I'll definitely be including in this morning's prayer. And Black Empower, thank you so much for reposting the stream. So if you've been joining us this week, you know something that we have been praying about is a prayer that my pastor put together with his sermon this past Sunday. And he said, how to honor God with your body. So he pointed out the different parts of the body to honor God with. And his coined phrase is, my bod for God. And Dr. C, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And she says, happy Friday, founder, and happy Friday to you as well. So we're going to get into our morning prayer and start here, and then I will finish off the prayer. So God, thank you so much for bringing us here today. And for my mind, God, help me fix my thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. So I will think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. And then God, help me with my ears. Help me to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. God, help me with my eyes. God, I make a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. God, help me with my mouth. God, set a guard over my mouth. Lord, keep watch over the doors of my lips. God, help me with my hands. God, help me to be God, help me to be good to everyone, especially to those who belong to our family in faith. God, help me with my reproductive organs. God, help me to honor you with my body. And God, help me with my feet. God, let your words be a lamp for my feet and a light on my path. And God, we're just praying for everyone as we go into this weekend. Father, we're praying for cover, God, that you protect your children, your little ones, which I consider even adults, your little ones, God, that you love. God, keep us safe, Father. Just protect our minds, our thoughts, our bodies, God. And as we go out for this weekend, God, I know it's coming off of a holiday and a lot of people are getting back to school. God, I know sometimes things can get tense and tensions, Father, but I pray for an attitude of gratitude and just that spirit of unity and communicating with teachers and public officials, God. I'm definitely also, just grateful just for everything that you've brought us through, Father. I know that a lot of times it seems really heavy and just, a lot of things are out there, God, and I know you put on my heart just to pray for our political officials. I'm really praying, God, that you help them to be better stewards, Father, those that have been um, allowed to be in positions of authority, Father, and that we as your people really work on setting the standard, Father, that we want people of integrity and honesty in office, and that we are no longer going to allow criminal behavior in any positions in the political arena, God. And it does start with us. And I know a lot of times people think that it's an insurmountable hill, but it's not, because there's nothing impossible for you, God. So we're just truly grateful for everything you're doing for us and everything that you will do for us in days to come, God. We love you, and it's in Jesus' name we pray and give thanks. Amen. So, with that, if there is anybody out there who would like to come up and pray, you're more than welcome to. Just send me a comment and or send me a direct message here on X, and I will send you a mic. And you don't necessarily have to show your face. It can be a little bit like radio, and you can just share your voice and pray with us this morning. So again, thank you for joining us. So we are going to start this morning out with a little bit of, I won't call it controversy, because you guys know me. If you know me by now, I like to be a little controversial. But I wanted to look at, before I read a little bit more about the history of Tennis Campbell, because we read a little bit about his history yesterday, and I got a little bit more fascinated, and I was like, well, what else happened? Right? I was like, because I wanted to give us a little bit of hope, right? In that even though he came across some hard times, in the end, what he set forward was amazing. But what I wanted to start off with was a interview I came across with Jon Stewart and AOC, or Alexandria Cortez, and how they were really looking at the Democratic Party. And I was like, wow, this is stuff I've been kind of saying myself, but it was really interesting to hear it come from them. So I'm going to let you guys check this out, and, definitely let me know your thoughts on this one.
Let's take the passion that you have for these issues, and let's think about, because right now the Democrats are almost fully defined by their positions on Trump, as opposed to, people are thirsty for a leadership, and the Democrats, I think, have had a really difficult time responding to that thirst, responding to that action. So, what is the process then of redefining what this party is, what it represents moving forward? And are there leaders there? It is sclerotic. I mean, it is a party in real confusion. And I don't know, I can't put my finger on. It reminds me of the Republicans in 2012, where there was just, when Trump came into that first 2016 primary, I mean, he just flicking his finger, not Jeb Bush. Yeah, nice. Boom, done. And I think the Democrats are vulnerable to that. So what is the process of redefining and recapturing what this party is?
Well, I think we need a real agenda. If you've noticed, the Democratic Party has not really had a platform with any sort of new.
I have noticed.
Yeah, there's no platform. I mean, there's technically a platform that gets voted out. This is the crux of it. If you ask a working class American or just any normal American, what is a Democrat? What do they stand for? They will not really be able to give you a clear answer. And so our party needs a clear and strong agenda. I think one of the problems is that the internal incentives within the Democratic Party are quite contrary to a clear, full-throated agenda. And that's why I think you notice, Biden on his way out, it was only on his way out that he was like, this country's controlled by oligarchs. Bye. We could have used that energy a couple years ago.
Okay. Now, interesting how she said our country's controlled by oligarchs, deuces, because he's a part of it. How are you going to run on something that the party has been doing? But where she wasn't wrong is that they don't have a clear message. And this is something that I've been saying for a couple of years now. This is why I started the Redemption Party. Because I was like, if you ask somebody why they're Republican or even why they're a Democrat, you're going to get tons of different answers. And there's really not any streamlined focus or agenda for their party because their parties are based in ideology. And nobody's really answering that big question. And that's the biggest question. Why are your parties stuck in ideology as opposed to really being focused on helping the people that that they say they want to serve, right? Because at this point, in my opinion, being in political office has just become a racket. There used to be a time in this country where people weren't paid to serve. Then they started getting a stipend. Then they got an income. And that is where the corruption got in, right? That's the sad part. And we're going to look at some things that I thought about, and his contributions and all this stuff. But see, this led me down another path where I don't know if you guys caught any of the hearings yesterday, but our new HHS secretary, Robert F. Kennedy, he was questioned on Capitol Hill. And two of the senators that were questioning him, it was a very interesting exchange. So I wanted to show you guys that, but I had to preface it with this video, right? Because AOC admitted it. She was like, we don't really have a clear agenda or a clear path. We don't. And they need to get there. So does the Republican Party. But like I said, I'm in the Redemption Party. We're focused on fiscal responsibility, limiting federal government to empower local government one community at a time. Because those are situations, or I should say, tenets, really. Those are tenets that we have that are not ideology based, but they're actually quantifiable. You can quantify if you're, handling your budget and you're fiscally being responsible, right? You can quantify looking at the amount of federal government, involvement at the local level or vice versa, right? They don't really take their cues from the local level at the federal level, but there are times when they'll look at the local level and say, oh, they've got something good here. Let's apply that, right? And then one community at a time. I think everybody can understand that, multiplication is better than addition. So that's what the Redemption Party is about. And if you ask anybody in the Redemption Party, like, what's your party about? They're going to repeat the exact same thing I said. Because this is a movement. Our party is based in those tenets. We do not carry an ideology. But like I said, that's why I made the party, because I was tired of the ideology. And tired of jumping through hoops to explain why I am with a particular party, right? And what they're about. So with that, let's get to these next two videos. The first one is going to be, her name is Tina Smith. I forget what state she represents, but she is a senator. And this is at the HHS hearing for RFK.
Tragic shooting at Annunciation Catholic School in my home state of Minnesota. You went on Fox News blaming school shootings on antidepressants. You have no evidence of that because you have no evidence of a connection. And
yeah, it's only on the label of the drug.
This is what you say, right? Secretary Kennedy, when someone presents you with information that does not fit.
I did not blame that shooting. I have no idea whether.
He said it's being investigated.
No idea, and I never said that. You're making it up. You're twisting. Yeah, you are.
Secretary
you are being
Kennedy,
dishonest right now.
You want to talk about mental health.
Now, the interview that she's referring to, or the press conference, is the one that I played for you guys. I want to say, was it yesterday? Let me look at my notes. I want to say, yeah, that was yesterday. That is when Kennedy was with Governor Greg Abbott, and he was asked the question about school shootings. So he responded. And His response was, we are doing investigative research to see what happened, because he explained that when he went to school, they had gun clubs, right? And people did, and they actually had classes that trained you in firearms, right? How to load a gun, how to unload it, how to clean it, and all these things. There were guns at schools. There used to be. Right? You cannot find a time prior to Columbine where there was ever a shooting at a school by a student or outside persons. It's just not in our history. But it did start happening when they found out that people were on medications that lowered their inhibitions. And so he said they wanted to do investigative work. He wasn't blaming it on the drugs. He was saying that's something we want to look into because we want to, definitely ensure and make sure that we have public safety in that area. But she's trying to politicize it. It's very amazing how people are. So let's continue.
And gun violence in this country. If you want to talk about mental health and gun violence in this country, we should be talking about that, because that's what the parents of Annunciation School.
You don't want to talk. You want to harangue, and you want to politically. You want to have partisan politics.
That is.
I want to actually solve these problems.
Ms. Secretary Kennedy,
I've never found a mass shooter, so I believe it's every one of them should go completely insane. 1 minute into art of the CDC.
I'm trying to get past.
It was the first government analysis of the key drivers of childhood chronic disease: ultra-processed foods, chemical exposures, physical inactivity, and over-medicalization. This month, we will follow with the MAHA report strategy, the Trump administration's solution for addressing each cause. At HHS, we haven't just been writing reports. We have been the busiest, most proactive administration in HHS history. In just half a year, we've taken on food dyes, baby formula contamination, the grass loophole, fluoride in our drinking water, gas station heroin, electronic cigarettes, drug prices, prior authorization, information blocking.
The committee will come to order.
Now, what's interesting is this person that's yelling at HHS talking about it takes us so long to get this man hasn't even been in office a year. You're talking about a prior administration. Actually, you're going back 3 prior. Okay. You need to go all the way back to Obama, because that's when your insurance really changed. Okay. With Obamacare. And it's only gotten worse because these insurance agencies are working with our federal government to not provide treatment. So they are making winners and losers. They are. Whether you want to hear it or not, whether you like it or not, that's what's happening. And what they don't want Kennedy to do is expose it. And he is. And they are terrified.
Yes, Senator, this morning I got the latest numbers from CDC that 76.4% of Americans now have a chronic disease. This is stunning. When my uncle was president, it was 11%. 1950, it was 3%. Today, it's 76.4%. 8 out of 10 of our kids cannot qualify for military service. This is a national security issue. When my uncle was president, we spent 0 on chronic disease. Today, we spend $1.3 trillion. It's the biggest cause, it's increasing. And all of the arguments that Republicans and Democrats have about single payer, Obamacare, or with the various ways to allocate the health dollars, they're all like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. If we don't end this chronic disease, we are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at CDC. They did not do their job. This was their job to keep us healthy.
Thank you,
And I
Mr.
need to fire some of those people to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
CDC failed that responsibility miserably during COVID when its disastrous and nonsensical policies destroyed small businesses, violated civil liberties, closed our schools, caused generational damage in doing so, masked infants with no science, and heightened economic inequality. And yet all those oppressive and unscientific interventions failed to do anything about the disease itself. America is home to 4.2% of the world's population, yet we had nearly 20% of the COVID deaths. We literally did worse than any country in the world. And the people at CDC who oversaw that process, who put masks on our children, who closed our schools, are the people who will be leaving.
In the days after the tragic shooting at Annunciation Catholic School in my home state of Minnesota, you went on Fox News blaming school shootings on antidepressants. You have no evidence of that because you have no evidence of a connection. And
Yeah, it's only on the label of the drug.
you know, this is what you say, right? Secretary Kennedy, when someone presents you with information that does not fit.
I did not blame that shooting. I have no idea whether
He said it should be investigated.
No idea, and I never said that. You're making it up. You're twisting. Yeah, you are.
Secretary
you are being
Kennedy,
dishonest right now.
If you want to talk about mental health and gun violence in this country, if you want to talk about mental health and gun violence in this country, we should be talking about that because that's what the parents of Annunciation School.
You don't want to talk. You want to harangue, and you want to politically. You want to have partisan politics.
That is.
I want to actually solve these problems.
Ms. Secretary Kennedy.
I've never found a mass shooter. So I believe it's every one of them. There's gang shootings, they lump those in, but there's no kid in the black trench coat, devil worshiper, tranny, it's always the same. I've never seen one, and we did a whole thing on this for days last week, where they weren't on SSRIs, and now the puberty blockers and all that makes you go completely insane. And it says on.
Now, on my show, I actually had, Dr. Nikki and Gabrielle Clark, and they actually kind of, looked into it. Now, I'm not sure if this person was on medication or not, but what they did really preface is that this person was socially transitioned, right? Because that happens prior to the medication because they were not trying to physically alter themselves. They were socially altering themselves. And that may be even more dangerous than the medications because I want to say even Unc was like, for somebody who's technically not mentally fit, we'll just say that, they came up with a whole plan on how to eliminate people. So you can't be in both spaces, right? You can't be in the space of mental decline and at the same time you're carrying out a plan for mass shooting. Something's got to give. Right. And a lot of times these individuals, they do some, I should say, they go on their rampages and it's not very tactical. Right. Some of those people are on medications. Right. We found out, I think it was the person transitioning from a female to a male. But this person was socially transitioning, not medically transitioning. Now, that's not to say that they weren't on maybe any type of antidepressants because those also inhibit your senses, right? It lowers your capacity for sympathy and empathy, right? And it may put you in a state where you take someone else's life under those certain circumstances with those medications. So, I know for Alex, they do look at a lot of individuals that were medicated. Now, I want to look at a little bit of a clip from Bernie Sanders as well and what his exchange was with Kennedy.
Just for the record,
Avoid the link.
every single Republican, I don't mean to be political here, Mr. Chairman, has received PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. Are they all corrupt as well?
And I'm telling you, the American Heart Association has been co-opted by the food
Everybody but you, Senator. But you know what? When you ran for president, we have a corrupt campaign finance system. Maybe you will agree with me on that. Okay, you were already president, you got a billionaire behind it. You received $300,000 from people, not from the industry, people in it, as I did, from individuals. You corrupt. President Trump got $3 million.
No, what matters is the
Republican
action you
got
take.
corporate PAC money for the pharmaceutical industry. Democrats as well. Everybody is corrupt, but you? Is that what we're looking at? I don't think so. And I think the issue now...
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, I think you do know what I'm talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The issue is every time anyone
Are you
disagrees
saying
with you...
Are you saying the pharmaceutical industry was supporting my presidential campaign?
I'm saying...
I don't think
no,
so.
I'm not saying that.
They
I'm
spent $200
saying
million
the
against him.
I'm only gonna play that exchange, and then I'll leave that, in the links, so you guys can watch the whole thing. But this is something that I did want to share with you guys. This was a little bit about what Mr. Sanders was talking about, right? And this is healthcare campaign contributions from 1990 roughly till 2024. Who is at the top of that list? Bernie Sanders, y'all. Since 1990 through 2024 to last year, he has received over $23 million in contributions from pharmaceutical and health products, pharmaceutical manufacturing, health insurance and HMOs, hospitals and nursing homes, medical devices and supplies, medical societies, and nursing associations. He's at the top of the list. But he was there talking about Kennedy. Was he talking about himself? Was he ousting himself? There are those Freudian slips, right? I'm just saying. And Black Empire says, all this gaslighting from politicians to avoid labeling trans are dangerous. Yeah. They don't do this with any other group. You are correct. You are correct. It's like they are trying to create this preferential society, right? Where there'll be certain people giving preference and certain people not. Just like how I talked a week ago or so about how they use race as a caste system, caste, right? Where in India, the caste system is based on, names and, a little bit how their skin color is, right? Based on their last name. But here in America, they use the same caste system, but they use race there's really no such thing as race. They made it up to create winners and losers. Period. And the only reason why people call it white supremacy is because that phrase was coined actually in legislation. I won't say legislation. I will say it was coined in a court hearing with Japanese, saying that the Japanese should join the supreme race. Yeah, I'll have to pull that up for you guys. I'll make a note of it to pull it up for you next week and go through that, because that's what's happened in our country. It is what it is. But the amazing thing about this list that I found is that Raphael Warnock is number 2. Over $14 million. Now, if anybody knows Raphael Warnock, he hasn't even served one full term as a senator. Let me say that again. He has not served a full 6 years. His reelection is up in 2028. He's got 3 more years to go. So in the 3 years he's been in office, he has received over $14 million in contributions from healthcare campaigns. You don't find anything weird about that? I find that extremely troubling. And, we've got Elizabeth Warren as well, but she's been there for a minute. Like her and Bernie, her and the Burnster, they've been there for a second. Oh, and Tatas, thank you for reposting the stream. Now she's at 10 million. How's she been there longer than Warnock and she's 4 million behind? That is extremely troubling. That lets me know that my senator is bought and paid for by the healthcare industry. That lets me know that whenever I hear him talking about anything medical, because he does agree with the LGBTQ community. He does. He supports them. He supports this whole trans thing. He is right there 100%. And he's a pastor. He's not talking against it. He's with it. Yeah, he shouldn't be reelected, in my opinion, to anything. Like, not even dog catcher. Like, no, he's got to go. I'm just looking at this list to see if there's anybody else that nobody else that I really notice or that stands out to me. And most of these people, unfortunately, they are Democrats. And I know there are some Republicans that also accept this money, right? They do. They are not, how should I say, they're not off the hook. They all take money from lobbyists, because that's what they are. They're lobbyists. But they're lobbying for things put in their favor. But the person who's stopping them, they don't like RFK because he's putting a shutdown to the money train. And Black Empower says, Raphael Warnock, the pastor who supports abortions. Yeah, that too, y'all. Yeah, he supports abortions. And we already heard, well, you guys might have not heard it, but I actually heard in Kennedy's, one of his statements, that abortion, that was, I want to say in the press conference, that abortion was one of the CDC's most lauded medical accomplishments. Abortion, killing babies. That's what they're proud of. Say that again. That's what they're proud of. That they're able to take life. What kind of organization is that? What kind of mindset is that? What? That's what you're proud of? You're proud of killing babies. Wow. But this is why Kennedy is firing all of them, and they cannot handle it. They don't like it. They're like, this guy, he's messing with our money. He's moving our people around. We were living the life. Now this guy is here, and we got to get rid of him. Interesting. And Vala, good morning. Thank you for sending love and the hearts. Yeah. And so we really need to watch these politicians. They should be servants of the people, but they're not. And I make that distinction. Anybody who calls himself a politician or is working in that realm, they're criminals. Period, flat out. But a person that refers to themselves as a servant of the people should have the record that follows that. Period. And we need to, as a country, start demanding that from them. If you are not going to be here as a servant of the people, you need to go. It needs to just be clear, cut, and dry. Just a simple question. Are you a politician or a servant of the people? And if you can't answer that, then you don't need to be in office. And definitely, if you say you're a politician, then we know where you're standing. We need to just vote you out. You need to say, thank you. Thanks for playing. Thanks for sharing. But it's time for you to leave. It's time for you to leave, because we know where you stand on matters. So I'm going to share one other news story that is just something I came across. It was really devastating. And then we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back. But this one was very heartbreaking. And I wanted to share this with you. And I don't know if it's gotten any national attention. It may or may not, because it was something that happened at the local level, but it's something to be abreast of, especially for our children out there, because sometimes they don't really think that, playing pranks or just being kids could end up in a tragic situation. So here you go.
Oh, and it's a developing situation. Charges now filed after the shooting death of an 11-year-old boy who was playing Ding Dong Ditch.
This is a prank where you ring a doorbell and then run away, and this time it turned tragic. Fox 26's Jade Fleury is at the courthouse where we believe the man charged will face a judge, I believe here, actually in the next 30 minutes.
Leon Gonzalo is charged with murder and is expected in court here this morning. And Gonzalo has the same name and address as the property where that 11-year-old boy was shot and killed after ding-dong ditching over the weekend. The shooting happened over Labor Day weekend at a house on Minboro in East Houston. Police say that kids were ringing doorbells and running away when a homeowner came out and shot at the kids, hitting the 11-year-old boy in the back. He died Sunday at the hospital. The shooter was questioned and released, but now we know that a man has been arrested for murder. One defense attorney gave us some insight on Texas's defense laws to see if the shooting was justified.
If you look at the bottom part of the self-defense law in the code, it says that you can use deadly force if something is stolen from you and you have a reasonable belief that you're not going to be able to get it back. But simply ringing the doorbell and running away, if the person's fleeing the scene, hasn't taken anything, hasn't broken into the house, no forcible entry, there's no threat, I just don't see self-defense.
Again, Gonzalo is expected to appear in court around 9 this morning. Reporting from downtown Houston, Jade Fleury, Fox 26 News.
Yeah. And I just wanted to share that with us because I know that some of you guys out there still have young babies. My babies are grown and gone, right? But I do have a young grandson. And, sometimes, kids are just being kids and they're just being silly. But, there are people out there that are just angry and they're taking this to another level. And that gentleman should have known better and he shot this young man in the back as the young man was running away. So it wasn't like this young man was still on his porch or running towards him or tried to force himself into his house. He was just being a kid. He was just being a kid. And this is dangerous. And again, I want us to make sure that we are encouraging our young men and women, to be respectful. I mean, I used to play ding dong ditch as a kid, but I lived on a cul-de-sac. I was kind of sad because everybody knew, especially if our friends weren't all outside together, we would go, yeah, you were at my house last night. Don't do that. But we don't live in that society anymore. We really do live in a society that's over heightened with anger, because his baby, he was only 11 years old and he lost his life for playing a prank. I mean, that should just never, ever be. So with that, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to get into something I explored yesterday. His name was Tunis Campbell. But before we get into Mr. Campbell, I wanted to share a video with you for Cat Williams as well that I came across. And they'll kind of weave in together. But I wanted to, just share some more insight with you guys. But thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. And I'll see you on the other side.
The browsers of today are broken. They've been overtaken by a barrage of sneaky and annoying ads, trackers that follow your habits, and cookies that build profiles and all sorts of other internet clutter that's taking precedence over the content that you want to see. In fact, these useless bites can take up to a whopping 50% of page load times, with a third of it anxiously trying to learn more about you. To make matters worse, some ad blockers are even letting ads through when large advertisers pay them. But do you really want a leaky ad blocker? It's because of these very reasons that we developed Brave, a new browser that kicks internet crud to the curb and makes it faster, safer, and better to surf the web than your current browser. With Brave, everything you need is built right in. We integrated technology that automatically blocks trackers, annoying ads, and shields everything that can cramp your style and destruct your privacy. With it, you can expect increased speeds nearly 2 times faster on laptops and up to 4 times faster on mobile. And unlike any other browser, Brave allows you to support your favorite publishers with automatic micropayments. So it's a win-win for you and your favorite sites. To top it all off, Brave is open source because we truly believe it's our web and we need to fix it together. So ask yourself this question: do you want a web browser made for the internet of today? If so, try Brave. It's faster, safer, and ad-free.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining us here on Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. And my name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. Now, before we get into everything else, I wanted to tap into looking at contributions because, going over that information that I shared with you about Kennedy and about Warnock and let's see, Senator Sanders and, the other senator, I didn't see her name on the list. She might have been on the list, not sure. But Senator Elizabeth Warren as well, being the contributions, where they came from. Sometimes do we always know where money comes from? Because I really had a question about that. So, of course, I engaged with ChatGPT because I was like, what are we doing? What are we doing wrong? And what should we be doing, right? So I said, is there a way to find out if elected officials are given contributions from gangs or cartels? I just found it fascinating, right? Because sometimes they get these millions of dollars and you're like, well, where did they get this money from? Like, how do you have all this money? Now, they do report it to the FEC, right? Because they have to. But how are they getting some of this money and where is it coming from? So it says legally reported contributions. All federal candidates, House, Senate, President must disclose campaign contributions to Federal Election Commission, which is the FEC, which our party is registered with. So how illicit money flows in could be straw donors, that money funneled through individuals or shell companies who appear legitimate. PACs or super PACs, criminal networks may launder money through organizations that look legal, dark money groups, which use nonprofits like 501c4s, which don't have to disclose their donors. So illegal sources could hide their cash gifts, favors, or threats. Okay, at the end of it, off-book support that doesn't show up in filings, right? So there have been cases investigated by the FBI, DEA, and DOJ to investigate cartel-related corruption. Past cases show local officials, sheriffs, city members, and border area politicians have been indicted for taking bribes linked to drug organizations. And I was like, wow, finding all of it fascinating. So it said, would you like me to check if there were any recent cases in U.S. history where elected officials were caught taking carteling money? I was like, yeah, sure. Like, show me what's going on. So some of the notable cases are a Mexico former security chief, Guillermo Garcia Luna, between 2006 and 2012, was convicted in U.S. federal court for taking bribes from the Sinaloa cartel. He's sentenced to 38 plus years in prison for aiding the cartel instead of serving justice. So those things could be happening. Now, in Illinois, a political corruption. Michael Madigan, he was a former speaker of the Illinois House. He was convicted in early this year, 2025, on multiple counts of bribery, wire fraud, and conspiracy, especially linked to utility companies like ComEd, but there's no connection to gangs or cartels, right? But somehow he was bribed. So they did find corruption there. Other high-profile U.S. corruption case, Bob Mendez, I think everybody's heard of that person accepting bribes, and Philadelphia Mayor Eric Adams, different Eric Adams, who was indicted for allegedly accepting bribes and illegal campaign contribution from foreign sources not related to criminal organizations. But do we even know if they're criminal or not? If they're foreign, we don't. We don't. And that's crazy. That is really crazy. But like I said, we need to start as citizens of this country demanding that we have people that serve the American people. They serve us. And if they're serving somebody else, we cannot elect them into office. We need to create those numbers. So I asked about dark money. What is it? Who are the people involved in it? And it says who uses dark money: nonprofit organizations, social welfare groups. Interesting. Social welfare. They can spend money on political activities without disclosing donors. For example, Americans for Prosperity, they're linked to the Koch network. Okay. So trade associations, 501c6 groups, business leagues, chambers of commerce, professional associations. Example, U.S. Chamber of Commerce has spent heavily in elections without naming backers. This is how some of this money is getting into our elections. And it's difficult for somebody to run when somebody else is giving another person millions of dollars and doing all this. And a lot of people think, well, they got money, people are backing them, but who? It's the who that's backing them. And are those policies going to translate into something that betters your life and existence? If it doesn't, you shouldn't be voting for those people. Just saying. Shell companies. Sometimes wealthy individuals or corporations create a temporary LLC that donate to PACs, making it hard to trace the original source. So somebody might put $2 million into a fake company, donate that to a candidate, and then later on dissolve the company. And because there's nothing but dissolving the company, right? You can say, well, it just wasn't lucrative, but the $2 million is in somebody else's pocket that they can have influence over. They're picking winners and losers, and they're doing it in a criminal way. So donor advised funds. Wealthy people give to large charitable funds like the Fidelity Charitable, which then donate to political nonprofits, further obscuring the trail. So this is how they're doing it. Right. The Supreme Court's Citizens United versus FEC in 2010 ruling allowed corporations and unions to spend unlimited money on elections. Combined with IRS rules that let nonprofits keep donors secret, it created the dark money loophole. So our own Supreme Court contributed to this. I think this is something that they need to look at again. Because in 15 years, it has devastated everyone. And it has put the criminals inside of our political arena. This is why you see all of this criminal behavior going on. And again, our Supreme Court did it. They did it. The question is, are they going to address it? So these are some examples of dark money networks. The Koch brothers network, Arabella Advisors Network, and I talked about them, I want to say about a week ago, because they were funding some ventures, I think, in regards to the new MSNBC venture and their whole rebranding and all that other stuff. Yeah, them. Crossroads GPS, which is a conservative group linked to Karl Rove, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, major corporate backed spender. So it's not just Democrats, it's Democrats and Republicans, both parties. Just saying. It is both parties doing this. And why it matters is voters don't know who's really funding campaigns or what interests are behind the ads they see. It makes it easier for foreign money or criminal money, cartels, oligarchs, etc., to sneak into U.S. politics through layers of profits and shell groups. It raises concerns that elected officials may be serving hidden donors, not the public. Well, we know who they're serving because they're not serving us. we know they're not serving us. So it says, in short, dark money is hidden political money funneled through nonprofits, shell companies, and trade groups. The actual people or entities are usually wealthy individuals, corporations, or special interest networks who prefer to remain anonymous. Yeah. And I guess I wanted to say, list of biggest dark money groups active in the US in the last election cycle, and say, can you give solutions? Like, what can we do? I'm always like, okay, you've given me all the bad stuff. Like, what can we do to fix this? Right? Oh, good morning, Cajun lady. Good to see you. Thank you so much for the red, white, and blue hearts and your good morning. So, what is dark money, right? We talked about it. Dark money refers to political spending organizations, especially 501c4 nonprofits and shell companies. Okay. And they are not required to disclose their donors. And we see how our own Supreme Court in 2010 rigged the game. They did. This is disgusting. So who are the major dark money players? Well, in the 2024 election cycle, it's a staggering 1.9 billion, nearly doubled the previous record from 2020. That total includes spending by nonprofits, shell companies, TV ads, and online campaigns. Shadow party groups, those aligned with Congress's leadership, funneled a record 182 million into super PACs by September 2024. So top groups and their action: Future Forward USA, which Democrat aligned, contributed over 300 million, accounting for about $1 in $6 of dark money in 2024. Other key Democrat-linked nonprofits include Majority Forward and House Majority Forward. Right? Because remember, they can create these entities and there's no repercussions for these people. On the Republican side, there's One Nation, which is a Senate GOP aligned, and they spent 123 million. And American Action Network, a House GOP aligned, they contributed 69 million. So it's both parties. Don't get it twisted. It's both parties. Additional notable players: 1630 Fund, which is the Arabella Advisor Network. They spent 37 million on various state ballot measures in 2024. Wineward Fund, also Arabella, which is a 501c3 profit that financially sponsors progressive projects. Citizens for Sanity, a conservative dark money PAC that spent around 93 million in 2022, with more than 50 million donated by Elon Musk. Yeah, he's considered part of the dark money group. But at least he's telling us what at least he was open, right, about who he was supporting, how much money he was given. So I don't really count him as dark money because he told us what he was doing and he was at least somewhat candid about it. Thank you, Elon. So why it matters: opaque influence. Voters cannot see who is funding the campaigns, hampering accountability and trust. Evasion of disclosure rules. Groups exploit gaps by running non-explicit ads or operating outside FEC reporting windows. Foreign interference risk. Loopholes allow certain organizations to receive foreign funding for ballot measure campaigns. So when they talk about a lot of those foreign influences in our campaigns, in our elections, they're not wrong. They're really, really spot on. So solutions: several legislative and policy proposals aim to improve transparency and accountability. So Disclose Act, Senators White House and Sicilian requires organizations spending in elections to disclose major donors each cycle. Closes shell corporate loopholes, introduces stand by your ad rule, ads must list top funders, aims to prevent foreign interference. So this is an act that's been, I guess, put on the floor. I have to double check. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, that's somebody who put this forward. American Anti-Corruption Act, a model bill targeting political corruption by overhauling lobby and ethics laws, requiring greater transparency in public political spending, and reforming election voting systems. Crackdown on Dark Money Act. Representative Gerald Golden mandates election ads, identifying their top funders, seeks overturn Citizens United and close relevant loopholes, bans corporate PACs, strengthens the Federal Election Commission with reform and better enforcement. And this all sounds wonderful. The problem is the people that we want to fix the problem are the people in the office that benefit from it. Why would they vote against themselves? I mean, right now, Anna Paulina, I always get her name wrong if I say it too fast. She's, putting together measures to say that members of Congress cannot trade while they're in office because it's insider trading and they are benefiting from it. They go in no millionaires to coming out millionaires and billionaires. But they write the rules. To me, that should be completely illegal. And any measures should be voted on by the people if it affects their job directly. As a people, we should be voting if they get a raise. As a people, we should be voting if it's okay for them to do insider trading or not. As a people, we should be voting on the campaign rules and how they can run. Because if we continue to allow them to set and make the rules, they're going to continue to break the rules. Why would they change if they're benefiting from the very laws they put in place? Yeah. And Spud McKenzie says complicit. Yeah, a lot of being complicit. So now we're going to shift gears. Now I came across this video. I don't know if I'm going to play all of it. And then trigger warning. Some of you might be triggered, but this is Cat Williams giving his response to Jillian Michaels. If you guys haven't heard about it, I want to say maybe it's like a month or two ago. Jillian Michaels, she was on CNN and she kind of went on this whole tour of Black people get over it. Slavery's over situation, right? And she's suffered a lot, and I don't want to say she suffered, but there's just been a lot of talk about it. And so Cat Williams talked about it, right? So let's check it out.
Worked too hard to become Black Americans in this society, and we were slaves here, and we did a lot of free work.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans own slaves?
Jillian, I'm surprised that you're trying to litigate who was the beneficiary of slavery. And
I'm not.
And it makes sense to me that someone like Jillian Michaels would say something like this. She is from a reality TV show. She's known for the show The Biggest Loser. It was a show where they would bring on people who were overweight, struggling with image and everything, and they would help them lose weight by making them do slavery.
Y'all, Cat Williams just went off on Jillian Michaels, and the receipts are insane.
Aren't you ready to get this racism past us? Like, no white person in here has ever had a slave a day in your life. Don't you want to get this the off of you? Pay those mother reparations.
So you know how Jillian went on CNN to downplay slavery and claimed we just need to stop talking about it because less than 2% of white Americans owned slaves? Well, Kat now wants to know how come it's fine to tell Black people to forget slavery, but certain other groups are never told to just get over it when it comes to their historical trauma. Black people are expected to move on from slavery, from centuries of brutal oppression, Jim Crow, redlining, mass incarceration, and ongoing police violence. But other groups get official remembrance days, museums, school curriculum, government-funded research, and countless Hollywood movies. And if you dare to question any of this, it's pretty much over for you, especially if you work in the entertainment industry. Meanwhile, Jillian Michaels can say on national TV that slavery wasn't that bad because only 2% of white people were slave owners, which, by the way, is factually incorrect. Now, as you guys know, Cat doesn't just make jokes, he delivers lessons. And this time, he came with receipts to destroy Jillian's whole persona.
So I'm not allowed to then come back the next day and apologize. That's for the Tracy Morgans of the world. I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. Don't come here talking to sons of slaves about that.
So Cat Williams just spazzed out on Jillian Michaels, and he did not hold back. And from the moment he addressed her CNN comments, it was clear he wasn't here to play nice. And he didn't just call out Jillian for her slavery comments, he dragged the whole idea that white people get offended when called racist. And Cat's point was simple. If white people are really upset about being labeled a racist, then maybe the energy should go toward doing something about it, like paying reparations for centuries of stolen labor, land, and wealth.
White friend, don't you want to get slavery behind you? You ain't never had a slave in your mother life. Get this past you. You pay them reparations, racism is dead. Get it past you, white friends.
And then Cat got a little more serious and said, there's a darker reason people like Jillian want you to just stop talking about slavery. He said the reason people like Jillian want black people to just forget slavery is all about control and narrative. They want everyone to think slavery ended because of white people's generosity, not because enslaved black people, especially black women, fought tooth and nail to resist, survive, and reclaim their freedom.
They don't even talk about slavery in America.
Okay, I just want to get to, thank certain people for reposting the stream. Mark from the Soil, thank you so much for joining us this morning and reposting the stream. And, Black Empower says, none of these celebrities would ever tell Jews to get over the Holocaust. And it didn't even happen in America. And you're not wrong. It happened on foreign soil. And yet they hold not just us by, by the purse strings, literally, with it. They hold other countries accountable for it. Like, what are you doing? Look, it happened over here. You should be getting money from people where it happened. You shouldn't be getting it from the American taxpayer. But we're still paying for people that were injured from the Holocaust. And that makes no sense to me. It doesn't make sense to anybody. It's weird.
You know why? Because they don't want to give no credit to the people that got black people out of slavery in the first place. They don't want them to get no shine. So they erased it from history. But I'll say it right here in front of the world. Black women got black people out of slavery in America. That's the facts. As a group, black women did that.
And that's the part they don't want you to see. The rebellions, the escapes, the leadership of women and men who organized, led, and survived against impossible odds. So when Jillian defends Trump for wanting to remove slavery exhibits from museums, she's basically saying we should rewrite history, and if you have a problem with it, you just need to get over it. Now, in case you missed it, that whole conversation about slavery on CNN started over Trump declaring war on the Smithsonian and other institutions because, in his opinion, they focus too much on how bad slavery was. This is what Trump wrote on his Truth social media platform. The museums throughout Washington, but all over the country, are essentially the last remaining segment of woke. The Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future. We are not going to allow this to happen, and I have instructed my attorneys to go through the museums and start the exact same process that has been done with colleges and universities, where tremendous progress has been made. Meanwhile, the White House also published a list on its official website of all the exhibitions they want to remove because they focus too much on race. And Trump already signed this executive order telling places like the Smithsonian to get rid of their exhibits because, according to him, they make the country look bad. So when Jillian defends this kind of of thinking, it's basically her saying, we should rewrite history to make it look like slavery wasn't that big of a deal, and it was just a tiny percentage of white people.
He's not whitewashing slavery. So
he's not?
He's not. No,
Okay.
he's not. And you cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. But let's talk about the fact that when you look
at slavery,
let's talk about the fact.
Slavery in America was.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans own slaves?
But it was a system of white supremacy.
You realize that slavery is thousands of years old?
White people were
Do you know
the slave
who
owners.
was the first race to try to end slavery?
Well,
what's controversial?
Now, first off, the conversation was specifically about American slavery. So Jillian's argument is just gaslighting. And let's clear this up once and for all, because Jillian's comment about other races had slaves too sounds smart if you don't think about it for more than 2 seconds. Yes, technically, slavery has existed in a lot of cultures throughout history. However, American slavery was unique in several ways. First of all, slavery in America was specifically based on skin color. In other societies, people were enslaved for different reasons: war captives, debt, punishment, and many of them could eventually buy freedom or work their way out. But in the US, if you were black, you were enslaved for life, and not just you, your children and your children's children. That's called chattel slavery, where human beings are treated as property, passed down like furniture. And no other system in modern history industrialized slavery by skin color like America did.
American chattel slavery was unlike any other system of enslavement in history due to its permanence, racialization, and extreme dehumanization. Unlike ancient slavery, where individuals could sometimes earn their freedom, marry into society, or hold status, American slavery was hereditary. Children born to enslaved mothers were enslaved for life, with no legal pathway to freedom. This system was codified into law, ensuring that black people were permanently seen as property, not individuals with rights. And while some point out that Africans participated in the slave trade by selling captives to Europeans, it is crucial to recognize that the system that they contributed to was vastly different from the chattel slavery that emerged in the Americas. African societies engaged in slavery as a byproduct of war or debt, often with opportunities for eventual freedom. What Europeans created was industrialized systems that permanently dehumanized an entire race, with no possibility of liberation or dignity.
And American slavery wasn't just cultural, it was written into the law of the land. From the Constitution's 3/5 Compromise to the Fugitive Slave Act, the U.S. government explicitly protected white supremacy and the ownership of black people.
They fought wars, they led revolts, they built America. But in the U.S. Constitution, they were counted as 3/5 of a person. Not a full human, not even close. This wasn't a glitch, it was the law. In 1787, during the writing of the Constitution, the U.S. made a deal. To give southern states more power, every 5 enslaved black people would count as 3/5. That's how slave states got more seats in Congress, while keeping millions in chains.
And that means it wasn't just a few bad individuals. The entire state was structured around it. So Jillian Michaels acting like it was a random 2% of white people is flat out false, because all white people benefited from the system, whether they owned slaves or not. In fact, the entire U.S. economy was built on slavery. Cotton, tobacco, sugar, those crops weren't just industries. They were the industries. Cotton alone was called King Cotton because by the mid-1800s, it made up more than half of America's exports. And who picked it? Enslaved black people. And that money didn't just stay in the pockets of plantation owners. It built banks in New York, shipping companies in Boston, factories in the North. Every corner of the country was cashing in.
Couldn't have built the biggest economy in the world without us.
Right.
It was actually built because of us.
This is true.
The largest reverse transfer of wealth, arguably in world history and modern history, is black slavery. That's not me making an emotional statement. I'm not throwing darts.
It's a fact.
It's a fact.
Right.
I love math because it doesn't have an opinion.
Right.
And the fact is, we're the largest economy in the world. The fact is, the first millionaire in America came from cotton, financing it out of New York City.
Right.
The fact is that black slaves were worth more than railroads. Our railroads were arguably the most valuable asset in
Right.
the 19th and part of the 20th century. Blacks were twice that. The fact is that we worked for free for 270 some odd years. Nothing better than free labor. And the fact is that we couldn't create wealth, we couldn't create assets because we were assets. Bought, trade, insured, finance, underwritten. We were literally, whether if you're a bank, if you're a finance company, if you're an insurance company, if you were a trading company, I mean, 1 out of 5 people in the world at a certain point in the 1800s were involved or connected to cotton. Well, where did cotton come from? In the world. It came from us.
Right.
So when Jillian says, stop blaming white people, she's ignoring that those same roads, universities, and corporations that made America great were literally funded by slave labor profits. And even the poor white folks who couldn't afford slaves still got something out of the system. They weren't chained, they weren't whipped, they weren't sold away from their kids. They could vote, own land, get jobs, and walk free without a slave catcher asking for papers. And that safety and status came directly from living in a world where black people were dehumanized. So yeah, they weren't technically slave owners, but they were still on the winning team. And also, that wealth never went away. When slavery ended, the profits didn't disappear. Families that owned plantations kept their land. Banks that financed slavery kept their money. Insurance companies that insured slaves kept those premiums. That generational wealth still circulates today. Meanwhile, black families started from zero, actually less than zero, because they were denied land and opportunity by law. And anytime black Americans did manage to build something for themselves, the system came in and burned it down. Remember Black Wall Street in Tulsa? In the early 1900s, black people had their own banks, their own businesses, their own thriving community. They were proving they didn't need handouts. They were building wealth on their own terms. And what happened? In 1921, white mobs, backed by the police and government, bombed it from the sky and burned it to the ground. Hundreds were killed, thousands were left homeless, and millions in black wealth were wiped out overnight. But with Trump now declaring war on museums and changing school curriculum, you can expect all this history to be memory hold. And that right there is why Jillian defending Trump and saying, "Don't blame white people" argument is not just wrong, it's insulting. Because America didn't become America in spite of slavery. America became America because of slavery. But Trump is out here saying, we should stop talking about slavery because it makes America look bad. And let's be real, when Trump says, "Make America great again," the again isn't referring to some magical time of prosperity and equality. He's talking about the time when white people had unchecked power, when segregation was law, and yes, when slavery itself made America rich. That's the greatness they want back. And that's exactly what Kat pointed out. He said this whole forget slavery talk is really a distraction tactic. See, the agenda isn't just to stop talking about slavery. The agenda is to make sure black people never unite around the truth of it. Because unity means power. And power means you can't be controlled, can't be manipulated, can't be sold the same lie twice.
If you had the ability to control the black people on this planet, there isn't anything that you couldn't take, dismantle, destroy, or interrupt if you could mobilize black people. And so part of the ops agenda, a part of their modus operandi, is to find out which one of you is a potential leader. And if you are, then we begin a work of progress on your life, which will make people get off of that. It's a part of it, as much as in any defense, you trying to figure out which way this dude is likely to go so I can rip that ball. It's the same. You probably wonder, why do white people pay so much attention to black people if they don't like them? You would think if you didn't like something, why would you be paying attention to it? I don't pay attention to things I don't like. The liar knows what lie he told. You see what I'm saying? So even if I made it deceitful and I made you think that the answer is over here, but the answer is really over here, I'm still gonna be looking over here. Me, the one that tricked, because I know this is the right answer. Black people have lost their identity, but our oppressors have not lost our identity. That's just why they chopped those noses off of the Pharaoh and the Sphinx in Egypt in the first place, is because without this nose, we can tell you this is whoever it is. But with that nose, it can only be. Why would somebody vandalize a whole face and only vandalize one part? Nobody wanted to knock an eye off or take an ear off or no chins missing. No, just the nose. Because it's a brand.
But here's another part that makes Jillian's comments so disturbing. This is a woman who's literally raising a black child. And yet, she literally said white supremacy isn't the problem in the US. Instead, she said we need to focus on getting rid of black degeneracy. And yes, those were her exact words.
We constantly talk about white supremacy, but we look the other way with black degeneracy.
Imagine adopting a black daughter from Haiti, then publicly using terms like black degeneracy. That's not just hypocritical, that's evil. Because how do you look your own daughter in the face and tell her the real issue in this country is the degeneracy of her race? That's insane. And that's white Jillian is now being dragged to hell on social media. And some folks are even saying someone needs to check on Jillian's daughter, because if this is the type of stuff she says in public, who knows what she's saying inside her own house? So now people are asking, how safe is it for a black child from Haiti, of all places, to be raised by a woman who doesn't even believe slavery was that bad? Someone on X said, Jillian Michaels' daughter is probably so traumatized living with a mother who thinks that black people are responsible for their own oppression. And another person added, Jillian Michaels is your typical example of, I can't be racist. I have a black child. Only God knows what these children really go through behind the scenes, and what these celebrities' real intentions are when they adopt them.
Yeah, I know. That's why I had a trigger warning before I played that. Yeah, it is very scary. And Righteous Anger says, stop being Holocaust woke. Get over it. Now, if somebody were to come out and say that, it'd be, oh my goodness, the sky is just gonna fall, right? And thank you also, Righteous Anger, for sending me the YouTube link. Unfortunately, I can't copy it right now because I'm live. But also, Righteous Anger said, The Ledger and the Chain. I think that's the name of the YouTube video. But I wanted to play that video for you because we do live in a racist country. We do. Racism was created, like I said, as a caste system to create winners and losers. And who's at the bottom of that caste system still? Black Americans. And we've been here. To the point in the video, we are the only race of people that were not given the ability to work off our debt as a slave, and even biblically, right? You work off your debt, but then you get your freedom back. And Tata says, great video. Thank you. I'll make sure to share the link with you guys. But the one thing that they brought up, which I found fascinating, was the whitewashing. And we hear this term and we really don't see it through. But I do want to share something with you guys. I do get some of my research done with ChatGPT, and whitewashing is a thing. And I first really started paying attention to it when I read the book From Here to Equality. And I encourage every one of my listeners, if you haven't read that book yet, please read that book. It's called From Here to Equality. And at the end of reading it, I said, so we're still in slavery. We're just not bound hand and foot, but we're still in slavery. And a lot of people say, well, that's just a mindset. It's like, no, It's the chessboard that we live in life in this country, where we're constantly maneuvering how to just gain a foothold in freedom. In that, okay, look, we're here, we're working together, just leave us alone. But every time we start to become successful, it's blown up. Like, who's really doing that? Right? As they mentioned Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then now Tulsa, Oklahoma has just basically come down to, well, it was a fight between a whole bunch of people and the black people lost. Oh, well, maybe the black people rebuilt? And somebody was like, yeah, the black people, they rebuilt the city. They rebuilt some parts of the city, but nothing to where it was. Is there a Black Wall Street in Tulsa today? No, there's not. What about Ocala, Florida? I might be pronouncing that wrong. It might be Osceola, Florida, or Roswell, right? We don't think this part through. So I wanted to share with you guys about whitewashing. So I said, can you tell historically when whitewashing of slavery and Black American history has happened? Say, absolutely. The whitewashing of slavery and Black American history is a long-standing phenomenon in U.S. history, occurring at multiple key points. So Rosewood, thank you so much. I was like, Roswell. Yes, Rosewood. Thank you, Harrietta, for sharing that with us. So you guys, it was Rosewood. And Ocoee. Ocoee, Florida. Thank you. So early Republic and antebellum period. So this was in the late 1700s and 1860s. And when you read From Here to Equality, they do cover this. It says a portrayal of slavery as necessary or benevolent. So pro-slavery advocates depicted enslaved people as content and as content and well treated. Literature, political speeches, and pamphlets promoted the idea that slavery was a civilizing institution. Yeah. And Harriet Jacob says, I'm tired of immigrants telling us we don't have ownership in American U.S. too. Exactly. We were here. We were harmed. But we were brought here and we're here. And we are the descendants of people that he tried to use and kill off. You know, in any dysfunctional relationship, let's just say this before I continue. In any dysfunctional relationship, the first thing you need to be is honest on both sides, right? Let's have some honesty. Let's clear the air. Let's say what needs to be said and how it needs to be said, but let's not come with all the talking points, because everything that Jillian did is what they accused the Democrats of doing. Those are your talking points. That's your platform. You know, I know that Trump is going through all of the museums and trying to, take away things because it's so hurtful and it's so harmful. Okay, that's fine. Then we'll just have our own museums, period. There won't be the Smithsonian. But we're not going to give up our history because it hurts your feelings. But tell me it hurts your feelings and I'm okay with that, right? Because it hurts my feelings too when you ignore what my ancestors went through. Like, what are we doing? I'm not going to trade my feelings for yours. What? Oh no, we're about to have this conversation back and forth. It's dysfunctional. So let's create some function with honesty. Be honest about what happened. And I'll be honest with what happened. And then let's move forward. But we cannot move forward without honesty. We truly cannot. And Harriet Jacobs, thank you for your hand claps. And Righteous Anger, my heart is beating so fast. I'm so angry. I know. Don't be angry. It's Friday. It's Friday. But Harriet Jacobs says, our existence for immigrants, right? And I'm not telling you guys this stuff to make you upset and angry. I'm telling you this because I want us to start demanding the hard conversation. Because I want the dysfunction to stop. Because what Trump thinks he's doing is he thinks he's making this better. But that's what a lot of people do in dysfunctional relationships. They're trying to make everybody happy, and I just want people to feel good, and I just want everybody to be okay. Well, guess what? We can be, but we have to have the hard conversation first. We can't get to we're good until we have the hard conversation. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. So, there was exclusion from historical narratives. So, early U.S. histories often ignored the contributions of Black Americans, focusing instead on white founders and settlers. Educational materials, school books in the South began to minimize the brutality of slavery to justify the institution. Okay. So Reconstruction and post-Reconstruction. Now, this went on from 1865 to the 1900s. Lost cause mythology. So after the Civil War, Southern elites propagated the lost cause narrative, glorifying the Confederacy and downplaying slavery as the cause of war. So this is where the mentality of certain people comes from, because it was propagated. They were told, oh, you weren't that bad. It wasn't that bad. We were just doing what we had to do. That part, right? Minimization of Black progress. Efforts to rewrite history often ignored Black Americans' political achievements during Reconstruction, including holding office and advocating for civil rights. Like I told you about the Georgia 33 with Tunis Campbell. He was a part of the Georgia 33. There were 33 of them in the state house, and they were ousted by white people because the white people said that Blacks shouldn't be here. You don't get to tell me that this didn't happen in history and I don't get to feel any way about it. You don't get to tell me that I can't get upset about this and ask the question, why? At least let's have a two-way conversation and let's get it out in the open, because you, Caucasian person sitting before me, I'm not mad at you. Absolutely not. What I'm upset with is that we cannot have an honest conversation about it without you getting in your feelings saying, don't blame me. I'm not blaming you, but I want to have an honest conversation. That's all I'm saying. So Jim Crow laws and textbooks, these things have happened. Textbooks and public monuments emphasized white supremacy and framed Reconstruction as a period of corruption, further erasing Black contributions. Now, I did read a little bit about Reconstruction, and I'm going to go back to it after this. So early to mid 20th century, so 1900s to 1960, right? Hollywood and popular culture, films like The Birth of a Nation in 1915 glorified the Ku Klux Klan and reinforced racist stereotypes. We don't talk about that. Textbooks and education. Southern states often taught that slavery was benign and that Black Americans were naturally inferior. They taught this. This persisted nationally to some extent. Historiography. Academic work largely ignored slavery's brutality and downplayed systemic racism, except for a few historians like W.E.B. Du Bois and Carter G. Woodson. Now, the civil rights era from the 50s to the 70s, resistance to teaching Black history. Efforts to incorporate accurate Black history faced strong opposition. Some textbooks continued to omit slavery's horrors and civil rights struggles. Token inclusion. Even when Black history was included, it often focused on few prominent figures rather than systemic oppression or grassroots resistance. Like I said, I just found out about Mr. Tunis Campbell and his buying the 1,250 acres and starting the city that he started, saying, we do not want whites over us. We want to do this on our own. I never learned about this man in school, but had I learned about him, wow, that's amazing. I want to teach my grandson about this person and other people that I know, and you guys, right? I want to spread this because my people, we're not dogs. We're people. But stop trying to tell me how to feel about my history. How dare you? Because it hurts your feelings. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm trying to learn more about who I am. But don't stop me from that. And they'll get mad at me if I get upset about it. I have every right to be upset about it. Every right. Like righteous anger says, my heart's beating so fast, I'm angry. Yeah, it makes us angry when we have to go through some of these things. And that's a natural reaction, I think. If you're not upset about some of this stuff, maybe you're in a different place than me. But I have a pulse. And I don't like hearing about my ancestors being injured or ousted when they were so educated and wonderful. Why? They weren't ousted because they did anything wrong. They were ousted because they were hated for the color of their skin. And it was allowed. That's a problem. That's the problem we're having. But you don't want to acknowledge that. You want to put it off and tell me I cannot get emotional about it and I can't get upset. That's the part I have an issue with. So in the late 20th century to present, 1980s to today, revisionist history in schools, there has been a continued tendency to minimize slavery, often framing it as an unfortunate chapter rather than a system of oppression that shaped the nation. Monuments and public memory, Confederate statues, renaming of schools, and selective public commemorations have often erased or distorted Black history. Digital and cultural spaces, while more accurate histories are now accessible, popular media and social narratives still sometimes perpetuate whitewashed versions of events. Yeah, and it's a key pattern. Slavery and Black history are often whitewashed to justify current power structures. Textbooks, monuments, and media are the main tools for historical distortion. Accurate narratives usually merge through activism, scholarship, and grassroots education. And it asked me to give a timeline. I was like, nah, let me just keep it moving. Now, we're gonna go through this real quick because I don't have a lot of time. But I wanted to look a little bit at Reconstruction because people forget about it. Like, what is that? Well, it was a time in our nation's history when there was actual peace. But peace. We were working together. People had respect for one another. Our country was at a great place. And then they legislated peace out of existence and allowed our country to return to a dark place. And we're still trying to get to Reconstruction, in my opinion. I don't know if any of you guys out there agree with me or not. You might not, and that's okay. But that's the mindset that I hold. Not an ideology, but a mindset that we need to get back to true Reconstruction and what it would actually look like, right? So I said, who released the Confederate Army? Why were they released? Were they pardoned? How long did Reconstruction last? And how can we get back to a true Reconstruction to heal our nation? Right? Because that's where I'm at. I want us to be healed, but we can't be healed having a dishonest conversation. We can't be healed saying, well, the things that you're showing, we think they're just really hurtful. Well, if they really happened, sorry. There used to be events where they would take out flyers and say, hey, we're going to find somebody and we're going to burn them alive in front of people and then sell off their body parts as trophies. That happened. This was after slavery. This was after the Emancipation Proclamation. These terrors happened. And you have to look at it and say, yep, we can't go back there. I think what Black people, and this may be just me, I need you to not only acknowledge it, I need you to understand that if a tear rolls down my face because I hear about it or see it, I'm not angry with you, the person in front of me. It hurts my heart that there was nobody there to stand in the gap to stop it. That's it. That's really where I'm at. I don't know if anybody else, but that's where I'm at. So, who released the Confederate Army? At the end of the Civil War in 1865, General Robert E. Lee surrendered the Army of Northern Virginia to General Ulysses S. Grant to the courthouse. Other Confederate armies soon followed and surrendered. And why were they released? So Grant and Abraham Lincoln both wanted peace instead of vengeance. So Grant offered generous terms. Confederate soldiers could return home instead of being imprisoned, provided that they laid down their arms and abided by the laws of the United States. This was part of Lincoln's with malice toward none, with charity for all approach, right? Were they pardoned? Yes, in a broad sense. Andrew Johnson, who became president after Lincoln's assassination, issued several amnesty proclamations starting in May of 1865. Most ex-Confederates were pardoned if they took an oath of allegiance, though higher ranking officials and wealthy landowners had to apply individually. By Christmas 1868, Johnson granted a full blanket pardon to nearly all former Confederates. So how long did Reconstruction last? It lasted for 12 years. From 1865 to 1877. But you think, why did it only last for 12 years? If slavery's over, right? Confederate Army's been pardoned. Why would it only last 12 years? That's the bigger question. Why don't we still have Reconstruction today? Because it said it only lasted 12 years. So that's an issue for me. So that really means our nation is not really healed, y'all. It's not really, truly healed. Maybe 2000 says, another great show. Thank you so much, AB. I appreciate that. All right. So it lasted 12 years. So the presidential Reconstruction from 1865 to 1867, Johnson's lenient policies let Southern states re-enter quickly. Okay. Radical Reconstruction from 1867 to 1877, Congress imposed stricter requirements, including military occupation of the South, constitutional conventions, and the ratification of the 14th and 15th Amendments. Reconstruction effectively ended with the Compromise of 1877, when federal troops were withdrawn from the South in exchange for resolving a disputed presidential election. So how can we get back to true Reconstruction? Right? I was like, look, Taylor Nation. Reconstruction wasn't just about rebuilding the South. It was about redefining democracy, citizenship, and equality. A true Reconstruction today could include acknowledging unfinished business. That's what I'm talking about. The original Reconstruction was cut short, leaving systemic racism, voter suppression, and economic inequality unresolved. Because you got to remember, it only lasted to 1877. The Voting Rights Act didn't come around to 1965? What? Almost 90 years later, somewhere around there. What were we doing? Truth-telling. A national reckoning about slavery, Jim Crow, and discriminatory policies, much like truth and reconciliation commissions in other nations. Economic justice, real investment in communities historically excluded from wealth building, land, housing, credit, education. Now, a lot of people say economic justice. All I'm talking about with economic justice is if I have an 800 credit score, do not give me a 29% interest rate, when somebody else with a 600 credit score gets a 5% interest rate. That's all I'm saying. I should get the better interest rate, have a better credit rating, right? Based on what you say. But that's not what you're doing. And it's that part. Level the playing field and stop hiding your hand when you throw rocks all the time. Stop that part. civic protection, enforcing voting rights, and dismantling systems of disenfranchisement. Shared identity, framing the narrative of American history to honor all contributions, not just a dominant group. We all contributed to this dysfunctional mess, but you cannot keep telling me that I can't talk about the messes that happened, right? Because it hurts your feelings. We need to deal with this. We need to have a real conversation. And because we're not having a real conversation, the dysfunction continues. And Harriet says, the Compromise of 1877, too. They allowed the Confederacy another foothold, aka black codes. Absolutely. Haven't gotten to that yet, but yeah, they did. They did. So it says, would you like me to sketch out what a modern Reconstruction plan might look like step by step? And I said, but I had another question. I said, what was there specific legislation in place that should have given protection against Jim Crow laws and other discretionary laws? Now, it talked about the 13th, 14th Amendment. So I had to go down. I had to keep going, point out the legislation. So I know where this legislation is, and I just really wanted to define it. So I asked about Senate Bill 9. And my question, I said, Senate Bill 9, written in 1865, outlined protections for free slaves. Can you outline bills like those in United States legislation? So it tried, but it kept talking about the Freedmen's Bureau. I was like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this specific piece of legislation, and you guys will know why once I read it out to you. So Senate Bill 9, introduced during the 39th Congress, December 4th, 1865, was a pivotal piece of legislation aimed at addressing the rights and protections of newly freed African Americans, we'll say Black Americans, right? In the post-Civil War United States. This bill was part of a broader legislative effort to ensure civil rights and promote equality for Black Americans during the Reconstruction era. So they wrote a specific piece of federal legislation to protect us because they knew. They were like, we can't let these people go and not protect them. What? We have this law. Now, here's my thing. And if Donald Trump, if you're listening, if you can go back to 1798, you definitely can go back to 1865 and ensure that this is enforced because it should have been. And I'm not trying to lay the whole thing at your feet, but what I am trying to do is have an honest conversation so we can move forward, right? Because we got to have that honest conversation. But what I am going to lay at your feet is enforcement. That's what I'm going to lay at your feet. So key provisions to Senate Bill 9, citizenship's rights. The bill sought to grant full citizenship to all persons born in the United States, excluding Native Americans, right? This was a significant step in recognizing the legal status of formerly enslaved individuals, okay? When he talks about, the, I always get the 13th and 14th mixed up, but the 14th Amendment, the babies of slaves, right? When he talks about that, and everybody's like, dude, descendants of slavery, I need you to calm down. So, civil rights protections, it aimed to secure civil rights for Black Americans, ensuring their ability to make contracts, sue, and own property. This was crucial in providing the legal framework of economic and social participation in society. We should have never gone through anything, ever. That whole march that Martin Luther King did, that should have never had to have happened because we should have always had voting rights. Always. Period. We should never have to fight for it. We should always be allowed to go to any college that we want to based on merit. Always. This legislation was there since 1865. We should never have to have this conversation, but we are having it because nobody enforced it. Legal recourse against discrimination. The bill proposed measures to protect Black Americans from discriminatory state laws, often referred to as Black codes, which were enacted in southern states to restrict the freedoms of Black Americans. So the legislative context and challenges, the The introduction of Senate Bill 9 occurred during a period of intense political conflict. President Andrew Johnson's lenient policy towards the South, including granting pardons to former Confederates and allowing Southern states to rejoin the Union without significant reforms, were met with strong opposition. From congressional Republicans, these Republicans, particularly the radical Republicans, sought to implement more stringent measures to ensure the rights of freed slaves and to reshape Southern society. The bill was part of a broader legislative agenda to include the Freedmen's Bureau Act and the Civil Rights Act of 1866. However, despite these efforts, many of the proposed protections were not fully realized at the time due to political resistance and the eventual rise of Jim Crow laws in the South. We are not whining. We are standing on legislation written to protect us. And our federal government has failed miserably. And you continue to fail when you want to use words like, oh, this is woke and this is this. No, you need to deal with it. Deal with the dysfunction. No, it isn't great to see how people burned other people. No, it isn't great to see how these things were carried out. But you know what? It happened. You need to acknowledge it so we can all move forward. You need to use bills like this so when people are denied anything in this country based on merit, which it should always be merit-based, it should never be race-based. And they come back to you and say, I was denied this, but this person was given something and they don't even measure up to where I'm at. And they're asking me to give all of these things that are extra to get the same thing this person is giving. Why are we being treated differently? And they can never answer you. Ever. Because some were deep rooted and seeded, and a seed was planted and it has given birth to a tree with roots in this country. Has not been uprooted by the roots. You want to do me a favor? You want to fix this? We need to have a real conversation. And Spud says 100% thumbs up. Spot on. Thank you, Spud. Appreciate that. So legacy and impact. All right. While Senate Bill 9 did not become law, it laid the groundwork for future civil rights legislation. The principles it espoused were later incorporated into the 14th and 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution, which granted citizenship and voting rights to Black Americans. These amendments were instrumental in shaping the legal landscape of civil rights in the United States. In summary, Senate Bill 9 was a significant legislative effort during the Reconstruction era aimed at securing civil rights and protections for Black Americans. Although it did not pass, its introduction highlighted the federal government's commitment to addressing the injustices faced by freed slaves and set the stage for future civil rights advancements. Yeah, that's the thing. Was proposed, never passed. And it allowed all those horrors that happened to people in our lineage. And then you look at me like, why are you mad? Why are you angry? I didn't do anything wrong. No, you didn't do it. But our federal government allowed it. How do you have Reconstruction for 12 years? Oh, you release the people and you pardon them who were causing all the anarchy. And you release them and they became judges and police officers and congressmen and women, men and women all over the country. And then you look at me like I'm a crazy person. Like, what are you talking about? You have equality. You have the equality that you want me to have. Now, a lot of people may argue with me and say, well, there are people doing well. There are people doing well. I want all of us to do well. I want all of us to do well based on merit, not race. Period. I am a Negro American. That is my ethnicity. And it should have nothing to do with a loan application. Should have nothing to do with a college admission. It has nothing to do with a job application. Nor should people look at my resume and wonder and try to figure out my racial ethnicity. It should have nothing to do with that. It should be based on the merits. But you don't want that. Because if you did, we would not be dealing in race. We would have always been dealing in the merits. And with that, we are going to end the stream for this Friday, our Prayer with Friday. I'm glad I started out with prayer. And just know, when you guys see me being emotional and passionate about this stuff, because I am passionate about it. I'm passionate about our country healing, really healing, not this false sense of healing. I want us to have a good relationship that's not dysfunctional. We're not perfect, but I don't want us to be dysfunctional, right? And AB 2000 says, while their descendants benefited from all of it and squandered it away. Yeah. And it's sad because a lot of it is being squandered away, right? But again, thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News for this Prayer with Friday. And we'll be back on Monday. So have a great weekend. And remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you on the next one.